Hello all you zombie killing cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to be reviewing Killing Floor 2. Now the game has just released from its early access state and was developed and published by Tripwire Interactive. Now those of you who know me know that I suck at first person shooters pretty much all round. I am an absolute travesty. Doesn't matter if it's a console, doesn't matter if it's a PC, doesn't matter if it's a gamepad, doesn't matter if it's mouse and keyboard. I legitimately suck ass, and for some reason, no matter how hard I try, I cannot get better at them. So for someone like me who genuinely sucks at competitive multiplayer FPS games, things like the single player campaign and co-op modes on co-op focused games like the Left 4 Dead series are my go-to games for my FPS fix. The original Killing Floor was one such game. I love killing zombies, I like killing zombies with guns, and I like killing zombies with guns with other people. That is a lot of fun. Killing Floor 2 has been in development for quite a while now and has finally released on Steam. So let's take a look at where the improvements have been made and if the game lives up to its original. So for those who are unfamiliar with the Killing Floor series, it is a game very much in the style of Left 4 Dead in the sense that it's a co-op focused game about killing zombies, and you do so in a variety of maps. The game features up to 6-player co-op, or you can do it solo, and it's essentially a wave horde mode. You kill wave after wave after wave, and at the end of the waves there is a boss to defeat, which can be sometimes tricky depending on what boss you end up generating. So the first thing I want to talk about is the perk system. For people who are unaware, the perk system is essentially your character class. It is your loadout choice, and they have expanded this system in Killing Floor 2, so there are new loadouts to choose from. I always particularly favoured the gunslinger because handling 2 revolvers and shooting zombies in the head with 2 revolvers is a hell of a lot of fun, and it feels like an old western. So the great thing what they've done in Killing Floor 2 is not only do you have your perk class, so for example the gunslinger starts off with 2 revolvers, and then as you progress in a match you are able to buy better and better weaponry. Not only can you do that, but the perk system itself has been expanded to allow real meaningful progression with talent choices. So as you do more and more matches, you will gain experience in that perk class. As you gain levels, and I think it's every 5 levels, you will be able to unlock a talent perk, and there are 2 to choose from each time you get to the 5 level mark, and you are able to choose a talent that will affect your character class in some way. Now, one thing that Killing Floor 1 did really well is the blend of weaponry. So you had all kinds of weapons at your disposal. This time Killing Floor 2 has taken that concept and it expanded it further. So you have tons of weaponry depending on what you choose as a perk, and you can even buy weapons that are not necessarily attuned to your perk, so you can use any weapon you want. So if I wanted to choose a gunslinger and I fancied doing a round with a samurai sword, I can do that. Now, speaking of samurai swords, the melee combat has been revamped. It is a lot more fun and visceral and satisfying. In particular, I played a match with a guy who was dressed as a knight and he had a giant sword and he absolutely kicked ass, and that was a lot of fun. There's lots of choices available in terms of weapons. For example, my gunslinger, he starts off with 1989 revolvers or something like that, and then eventually I can go up to dual 500 caliber magnums, and they are some powerful guns. So there's tons of variety, there's tons of options for all kinds of players. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You can use a crossbow, you can use a semi-automatic shotgun, you can use an automatic rifle, you can use a pistol. It is completely up to you, and I like the variety and the choice that the game gives you. I really enjoy the ability to really tailor your playstyle and your preferred weaponry to your perk, and that's ultimately what Killing Floor 2 does really, really well. Now, Killing Floor 1 offered you a great visceral, fast-paced experience when it came to the first-person shooter experience of killing zombies. Killing Floor 2 does that even further with the fact that they've redesigned the AI. There is new difficulty in the game, so Previously, you would have in Killing Floor 1, the zombies would have set AI and they would just do the same things over and over, but you would just get more of them. In Killing Floor 2, what happens is the zombies will start to behave differently than they would in previous waves, depending on how you're progressing. So they will try new attack moves. They will spawn at different locations. There will be a variety of difficulties to overcome as you progress through the waves, and it all depends on how well you're doing. It depends on the strategies that you've in place so far. So, for example, I particularly had an easy time with the normal zombies, but I was struggling with the special zombies, in particular one that was a fleshbound, I think it was called, and they were a pain in my ass for the duration of one of my matches. So the game decided to spawn several more of them just to try and take me out, which was not fun. In terms of the zombies, there are fan favourites from the original game coming back. There are also new varieties of zombies that are coming in. There are multiple bosses, and for me personally, I really enjoy the boss battles. I think the boss battles are really entertaining. Each boss has different mechanics, different weaponry, so you have to react differently. My problem with it is that I'm not sure how the game chooses which boss you're going to be facing. All I can say is at the moment I seem to be getting the Dr. I think it's Dr. Zimmer, one of the mad scientist bosses, a hell of a lot compared to the others. I seem to just spawn that boss over and over, and I'm not sure why that is. But it might be something to do with the level that I'm at, and as you progress further, you might unlock new bosses. But for the time being, I tend to get him all the time, with the occasional different boss every now and again. The maps themselves are fantastic. I was really impressed with the level design. Maps, they're pretty damn big for what you have. They're a lot bigger than other games like Left 4 Dead. The maps design is really good. There's lots of areas, there's lots of pathways that you can choose, and the variety within the level design itself is really great. So for one time you can be fighting on a farm with a barn and a main house and then lots of fields around you. Another time it will be a airport. Another time it will be, a forest with a train track running through it, and there's lots of different areas, and you kind of have to use the level and the level design itself to dictate how best to tackle the waves of enemies. And I think that is a really good idea, a really good feature of the game, and it does make each encounter feel very, very different than the last. The gunplay itself, which is one of the main things that you need to enjoy about the game, is fantastic. I really enjoy the gunplay. There is, however, a quite major negative for me personally, is the fact that when your team doesn't work together, it is a problem, and it is a major problem. Secondly, I feel that the game does lack somewhat some longevity, and the reason for that is because there's a lack of game modes. And while horde mode and facing wave after wave of enemies is fun, at some point that is going to get boring. There needs to be, the great thing about Left 4 Dead was the fact that it had a kind of story behind it, that you were trying to escape somewhere, and Killing Floor 2 doesn't really have that. And I understand that that's intended, but the problem is that with a lack of game modes and with a lack of game mode variety, it means that you're doing the same thing over and over. And while the progression does add a little bit of longevity to it, at some point you're going to have played all the maps, all the bosses, and killed all the enemies over and over. So what do you then do? It becomes a little bit, at the very end, towards the end of your progression, it's very stagnated in that sense. And I feel that game mode variety would have added a little bit of something interesting. Like, for example, why can't you have an asymmetrical mode in there? Why can't you have 4 people on the normal human side and then maybe one person play as one of the zombie specials? Why can't that be a thing? That would be fantastic. That would be so much fun. Have one of the players play as the boss themselves. That would be great. that would be a lot of fun. And I just feel that a little bit of variety would have gone a long way to making sure that this game retains a player base for the long-term haul. And I say that because I particularly myself found that, for example, I would play maybe 2 or 3 matches and then I'd had my fill and I was done. And yes, I would go back maybe a couple of days later, but I would never have a protracted period of time. I would not play for 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours like I used to do with Left 4 Dead or a similar game. Instead, with Killing Floor 2, I was spending maybe an hour to 2 hours in the game and then not returning for days on end. And it was always enjoyable each time I played, but the game never really held me. It never immersed me enough to the point where I was like, I don't want to leave this game. I'm going to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing. Now, the last final part that I wanted to finish on was the fact that the game does have microtransactions, which was implemented itself first in early access, and the community did not respond well to that. The microtransactions themselves are all cosmetic. There are no microtransactions that will be considered pay to win in any form. However, a lot of people did not like the fact that the microtransaction system was put in for cosmetic DLC. I, for one, am on the side of I don't really care, in the sense that it's cosmetic, so what? I mean, in the terms of, okay, I don't get that skin. It's not a big deal. And I understand that to some people that is a major deal. But for me personally, as long as none of the actual game is locked behind any kind of microtransaction, I'm not particularly fussed in that regard. Now, I understand why a lot of people were upset about it, especially in the fact that they added microtransactions before the game was actually released, which could be considered to be a little bit of money grubbing in that sense, because you're releasing microtransactions in a microtransaction store in an early access product, and I don't think that is acceptable. I absolutely do not think that's acceptable. If they wanted to monetize cosmetic DLC, they should have done it after release. That's just a fact, because you're asking players to purchase your game that isn't finished, and then on top of that, you're asking players to give you more money for cosmetic DLC when the full product isn't even finished. And that is absolutely unacceptable. Now, the developers did say at the time that it was back-end developers who were working on the cosmetics of the game, and it didn't take anything away from the gameplay development, which is fine, but at the end of the day, you have to put the consumer first, and you have to put the consumer's perception first, and the fact is, releasing a in-game store while the game isn't finished is not a clever move, and it's been proven time and time again. For me personally, now that the game is launched, the cosmetic DLC is not a big deal. It is not a big deal at all, and I certainly feel that it's not going to adversely affect the game in any way, so long as it remains cosmetic only. So that is my review of Killing Floor 2. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you enjoyed the video, please do consider sharing it on social media. Let me know what your thoughts are of the game in the comments section below. And as always, I will see you next time.